When I originally was going to teach on this, I began to look at the subject of stats. And I could have brought all these stats in and finally decided, you know what, the stats are so discouraging when you read the stats that I didn't want to share them with you. They're all over Google. I may share them with you the next week or 2 weeks from now, but the fact is, the stats are very alarming. The role of the father is a huge, huge role. Look, you can take the Bible out right now and talk just in society as a whole. The medical field, psychologists, people that don't even use the Bible for their counsel will say that the chances of children turning out and being productive citizens increases by huge percentages when there's a father present in the home. So we do make a difference. And I don't care what the feminists say. I don't care what the liberals say. Fathers make a huge difference, all right? So tonight I start with a famous passage that is always directed to the children. But I'm going to give you this passage, maybe from the eyes of God as He teaches it to the fathers too. Look at verse 1 of Ephesians chapter 6. Ephesians chapter 6. Okay, verse 1. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. All right, so parents, plural, that's mom and dad. Verse 2, for all clarification purposes, it's a male and a female, period. Honor thy father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with thee, and thou mayest live long on the earth. Verse 4 now, watch this. This is interesting. Verses 1 through 3, God includes parents, plural, husband, wife, mother, father. Verse 2, He mentions father and mother. Verse 3, He gives a promise to the children if they follow through with God's command. Verse 4, there's no mention of mothers. It's directly to the fathers. And ye fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but, watch this now, bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. Now, these 4 Wednesday nights I have the opportunity to teach, and I may do a 5th one depending on some scheduling things with another teacher. Tonight I'm going to talk about the honor of being a father. Next week I'm going to talk about how a father is the child's first hero. The 3rd week I'm going to talk about the hardships of father, and that's going to be a little tougher message for all of us to hear because sometimes we as fathers have to learn to take a stand in our own homes, even against our own family sometimes. And we'll talk about some of the hardships of being a father, but they're worth it. The payoffs are worth it. And the last 4, the fourth Wednesday will be on how to be a heavenly father, how to copy our God in heaven. So they're all H's for note purposes, if you want to take notes and so on. So let's look at the first issue tonight, okay? All of us as fathers know that when a child is born, I'll never forget one of the first things I thought when my daughter was born. On August 6, 1999, I held her in my arms, Briella, and she would graduate next month. And I looked at her and I was so excited. Sometime during that afternoon, I'll never forget, I thought, I got to pay for her wedding someday. That actually crossed my mind, Brother Coons, and I was like mad at myself for that. It's like, man, I got to pay for her wedding someday. And isn't it amazing that the first day she was born, immediately the subject of money came to my mind? Let's be honest tonight. Kids are expensive. How many can say amen to that, right? Kids are expensive. And listen, as men who work and have some characters, I look at the men in this church, we know and responsible to provide for our families. I'm not a big fan of lazy people. Can I get an amen right there? I like the fact that we have men that work and know how to work and break a sweat. All our works, all our fields are different, but we in this room, most of us know how to get up early and stay up late, working and supporting our family. We want to pay the price to pay the support, the needs for our family. We pay for our house. We pay for vehicles. We pay for clothing. We pay for food. We pay for a lot of things. According to a recent poll, the average child in America, by the time they were born till the time they graduate from high school, will cost a little over $200,000 to raise them. It's about $211,000 per child. $500,000 for you. Well, I got 3 daughters. Yeah, that's probably more. I think that we brought up the average there. But I'm sure many of us have figured out a way to lower that, but that's the average. But the fact is, I told my wife that, I said, babe, you figure that's almost $1 million we're spending on our 4 kids. We could have not had any kids and just had $1 million in the bank account. But the fact is, I wouldn't trade it for $1 million. I mean, I love being a father. But here's the deal. Watch this now. So that's something that weighs in our mind. Let's be honest. Let's be an open book. How many of you, through the years of raising children, have thought about finances and even had some concerns. Maybe there's times you were worried about you were going to even make it. Your daughter or your son had a need and things got tight, but you found a way and you pay. How many will admit that finances have been on your mind sometime through the years of raising your kids? All right? All right? And the rest of you, you're either lazy or rebellious or you never had financial problems. All right? So the fact is all of us have. Okay? All of us have. All of us at some point have definitely thought about that because the Bible says that's the curse of man. Eve's curse was giving birth. And that's tough. I would never say anything about that. I mean, I was there for all 4 of the births, and all 4 times I said, she's more of a man than I am. Can I get an amen right there? But anyway, so that's an amazing, miraculous thing that happens when she gives birth. But her work that day, my works now begins with providing for them and all that. So with that thought in mind, I want to talk about the word pay tonight. Pay. Because many people today are paying the price for the lack of fathers. Many people today are paying for the transgression of previous generations. As Brother George, he points that out all the time. He uses that Old Testament principle. I know I've heard you say that tons of times. So how can we avoid paying a regretful price down the road? Because the fact is, many of us get so consumed with paying for the houses and the clothes and the food and the shoes and the books and the curriculum and the school needs and vacations and youth camps and all those different things that we spend money on for our kids. All right? But here, watch this. I want you to listen to these few quotes before I give you 3 statements. Number 1, don't get so busy making a living that we forget to live with our family. Now watch this. This one really hit my heart. Sometimes men focus so much on their livelihoods, they miss out on their children's childhoods. Because men are driven to work. God gave us a desire to work. God put it in our heart to work. I was blessed to hear Brother Jake's testimony of me that they were in a staff meeting. He told me, Preacher, you're the most driven, motivated man I've ever met in my life. And I was flattered by that. I'm glad that he thinks that of me. And I am a pretty driven man, and I know many of you are too. But boy, sometimes I have to stop and hit the pause button and realize, hang on a second. Am I traveling at a rate or speed so fast that I'm making my family pay the price? All right, so let me give you 3 things that are important on the subject of pay. Number 1, pay attention to your family. Pay attention to your family. Let me say it again. Pay attention to your family. I love the sign language for pay attention. Watch this. Pay attention to your family. That means I've got blinders and I'm looking right here at my 9-year-old. I'm paying attention to her. All right, look at Ephesians chapter 6. Ephesians chapter 6 again. We're going to be in this chapter the whole time, verses 1 through 4. Look at verse number 1, okay? This is an interesting verse now. God commands who in this verse? Who gets the command in verse 1? Children, all right? Who gives the command in verse 1? God. So children have an obligation to obey God in verse 1, right? Because God has given the children the command in verse 1, correct? But children cannot fulfill that commandment without the parents. Because God says to the children, you are to obey them, and if you do that, it's right. So many children today are frustrated because I believe God puts in the heart a desire of a young boy, young girl to obey authority. But because that part of the trinity of this command, or that part of the triangle is gone, the children have no way of obeying God's command because God doesn't command them at this time to obey Him. He commands them to obey them, or us, parents, right? Does that make sense? Say amen if you follow me, okay? So because parents have been lacking in their biblical role or responsibility, children are wandering confused, which is why we have a generation of young people in the 13 and 14 and 15 years old who have zero respect for authority. Have you all noticed we live in a country now that has zero respect for authority? Anybody notice that? I've noticed that a lot. I mean, sometimes even in public, you can just see the rebellion on their face, the way our policemen have been treated over the last few years. I mean, it's obvious. And we want to fault the kids, and listen, we got to hold them accountable, but the fact is many of them have never been able to obey Ephesians chapter 6, verse 1, because an integral part of this command is not there. Well, they're there, but they're not there biblically, okay? Pay attention. Pay attention, all right? Look at verse 4. Verse 4. Verse 4 says this. And you fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. Now, I've heard verse 4 many times taught that we can provoke them to wrath by the way we discipline them. Like, we lose our temper, right? We get angry. We execute punishment on them. But more and more I study the Bible, the more and more I study what's happening in society. Neglect provokes them to wrath as much as anything else. You want proof? Many times I've counseled a young person in that office who's in active rebellion. And I asked them, why did you do it? And they said, I wanted my dad to pay attention to me. They did something bad because of neglect. Wow. That's powerful. That's powerful. So provoking your children to wrath is a whole lot more inclusive. Or it entails a whole lot more things than just flying off the handle. By the way, let me just give you a little principle, man. When we are frustrated with our kids, because let's be honest, there's been many times I've just like, I want to strangle my kid, right? The best thing you can do is send him away and wait till you calm down before you go back and discipline him. Beautiful principle. Beautiful principle. In fact, my kids the other night were talking about that, and they said, Daddy, we hated it when you did that. We'd rather you come in and just whoop us right away or punish us right away. When you said go to your room and you sat out there in the living room and talked to Mommy like nothing was going on for 20 minutes, we're sitting there waiting. When's the judgment coming? When's the judgment coming? But I was calm when I went in there. I disciplined them, and then we hugged, cried together, prayed together, and then we left it in the room and we went on with life. So many times we react in the wrong ways, and we can hurt our children's spirit, all right? But pay attention. Now watch this now. Pay attention to what your kids are reading. Pay attention to what your kids are listening to. Pay attention to your kids' friends. If this is a part of bringing them up, you know what that means? A farmer raises crops. Guess what happens? The farmer spends some time in the crops. He spends some time in the fields. He plows it. He gets it ready. He plants. He makes sure the critters don't eat it too much. He makes sure the pests aren't destroying his crops. He treats it. He protects the crops. Why in the world, pray tell me, would we protect crops more than our own children? One preacher told me a story one time that he went to another preacher's house. He told me this story. It's a true story. And he was sitting there and he's counseling this preacher because his daughter was acting very bad, sneaking out at nights and misbehaving. Found out she was sneaking out with some hoodlum boys, some thugs. And he looked there and he noticed by the back door, he noticed that the preacher had a shotgun there. And he asked the preacher, why do you have a shotgun there? Why do you have a gun there? He said, well, I got a gun there because I have a really special dog that I breed in the backyard. And I got to keep her safe from mutts coming in and, trying to rob her of the potential breeding dogs because it makes me good money. He said, sir, what's the shotgun for? He says, I shoot those dogs if they bother my female dog. He said, sir, if you take that shotgun and shoot some of these thugs coming after your daughter, she might be a better girl than that. You're protecting your dog more than your daughter, and that's sad. True story. And we live in a society like that. Here's the worst thing we can say as fathers. I trust my kids. Are you kidding me? No. I don't trust myself. Why would I trust my kids? People ask me all the time, why do you take your wife and kids with you and you travel? You don't travel alone. Because I don't trust myself. I don't want to be in a hotel room alone with 500 teenage girls at these conferences. I want my wife right there with me. I want my daughters right there with me. Why? I don't trust myself. So therefore, if I don't trust myself, why would I trust them? Let me ask you a question. What music does your kids have on their phone right now? Or on their iPod or whatever? Do you know? Do you know? You should. What book right now is your son reading? Or what video game is your son playing right now? Oh, preacher, you mean you're one of those overbearing, snooping? No, I'm a biblical man trying to obey the Bible who says I am involved in my kids' lives. I'm going to pay attention. When my kids are misbehaving, I'm going to pay attention. When they seem sad that day, I'm going to pay attention and find out why. When they seem happy, I'm going to find out why. Every kid is different. They all have different personalities. They have things they like and don't like. And child number 1 is totally different from child number 4. But I've got to pay attention and study them and find out what makes them tick so that I can meet the need when the need comes up, because I'm going to pay attention to my children. My 2 oldest daughters have one social media account. It's Instagram. My wife has both accounts open on her phone, and I have both of their accounts open on my phone also. My wife reads everything that both of my daughters post. You know what? Both of my daughters know it. And both of them aren't mad about it. Why? Because we started when they were 2. When you start things when they're 2, and they turn 16 and 17, they're not bothered by it because they've been used to parents that pay attention to their lives. Look, I grew up in a home with wonderful parents. I didn't have a church like this. My dad was never taught this kind of thing. But I tell you, one of the reasons I turned out was a pretty good boy in high school, even though I was a football star, dated cheerleaders, never got drunk, never did drugs, never lost my purity before I got married. You know why? Because my dad was always paying attention to his son. He was a worker. My dad worked law. He worked long hours. He worked at the university level teaching. He's in schools and activities and functions. He was the dean of men of a campus of students. He coached football and basketball many years that I was growing up. But my dad always knew what was going on in Randy, Nick, and Jennifer's lives. Always. We couldn't hide even if we wanted to. Pay attention. Pay attention to our children. That's a challenge tonight. Do you know what your daughter's interests are right now? Do you know what your son wants to be when he grows up? Have you ever sat down and talked to them and said, look, I'm paying attention to you right now. Come on. That's number one. That's the most important. Number two, this one's an awkward one for men too, but pay affection. Pay affection. Affection is huge. All right, look at Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4. You see a beautiful balance in God's command here. In verse 4 it says, and ye fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. Nurture. Admonition is a stronger term. That's where we maybe have a more of a, hey, I need to talk to you. No, you're not going to get away with that. I got to discipline you. I got to stand up for this. Nurture is more of that nursing aspect. That's the nurse spirit. That's the, I'm going to caregiver. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to help you. I want to teach you some things, okay? Now watch this. Most men have no problem hugging and smooching on their little girls when they're born. I have 3 daughters. 2 of them are teenagers now. I don't kiss on Brielle and Miranda like I kiss on my 9-year-old, okay? I don't smooch on Brielle and Miranda like I used to when they were 1 or 2 or 3. Things change. Things get awkward. They're turning into ladies. But there's so many other ways we can pay affection. You know what I learned? Both of my daughters love? They love letters from their daddy. I write my daughters letters regularly. I get on their Instagram accounts and send them a message on Instagram. Preacher, why would you do that? You're sitting in the room with them. No, you don't understand. They just got attention from their daddy in their world. I'm paying affection in so many different ways. Sometimes I write a letter to my oldest daughters. At Christmas, I wrote both of them a personal letter and said, hey, your daddy wants to take you both on a date, a Christmas date, just me and you two, and we're going to go to a store and buy some clothes. I miss the days when they just go to Walmart and pick a $10 toy up. Now they want $50 hoodies. But that's how you pay affection. My 2 oldest daughters don't hang up their letters on the wall, the letters I write them anymore on the wall. My 2 youngest still do that. But my wife said she was going through the drawers the other day, and they still have all the letters Daddy's written them. Why? Because that's the way you pay affection. And by the way, I might not smooch on them like I used to, but I hug my daughters all the time. I kiss them on the cheek all the time. Let me tell you something. This isn't from my counseling office. If we don't give them affection, they will find it somewhere. Because in the heart of a girl, she craves affection from a man. God put it in their heart to crave the touch and affection of a man, the appropriate touch and affection of a man. And so many girls today are abused because they never got that proper affection at home, so they go out in the world and a man takes advantage of them. Give them that affection. I told my daughters when they were little, if you let me be your boyfriend until you get old enough to start dating and get married, then I'll turn you over at the right time. If you ask my 17-year-old right now who her boyfriend is, she'll say Daddy is. And she has no problem with it. She's starting to like boys. Boys are asking for permission to write her, and I'm okay with that now. I'm accepting that. But I'm definitely going to be involved. Why? Because God told me to. We can't trust them, church. We can't. We can't trust them to make those decisions on their own. Too much heartbreak. We've got to pay attention. We've got to pay affection. Pay affection. Love those children. Hug on those kids. By the way, I'm 41 and I still hug and kiss my mom on the cheek. I still hug my dad. Every time I see my dad, I hug my daddy. He's 77. I hug him all the time. Pay affection. It's free. I know sometimes men say, well, that's awkward. Well, get over your awkwardness. It's not about you. It's about them. I don't feel comfortable kissing on a little 4 or 5-year-old girl. If it's your daughter or your granddaughter, help yourself. If it's an appropriate way, help yourself. Teach these young girls about proper affection. Biblical proper affection is a beautiful gift of God. We've shied away from affection because of this sick world. I'm not going to let the sick world take away my behavior that is biblical. We need to teach them the right way to behave in that area. And we can. We can. So pay attention, number one. Pay affection. I want to stop in time to give us a chance to ask questions and make comments. Number three, pay by association. When I am a father, that means they are my children. I am associated with them for life. When we think of the word association, it means simply this: connected. Connected. From the time my wife conceived our 4 children, we conceived our 4 children, I was connected to them, and I'm connected to them for life. Someday they'll get married. Someday they'll bring me grandchildren. I hear all those things are wonderful, right, Brother Sampson, Brother Coons, Brother George, the other grandpas in here? But Fouch, it's wonderful. I hear it's wonderful. But I'm always connected. And it's not all. I'm still connected to my mom and dad still. The connections change a little bit, but there's always a connection. I stay connected. Why? Because I'm going to pay by association. That leads to this phrase now, and this is what I want to end with, all right? Look at Ephesians 6 and verse number 2. All right. Now, Ephesians chapter 6, verse 2, the Bible says this: honor thy father and mother. Now, many would say that that verse is given to the older children. The first verse is when they're younger, obey. As they get older, honor. I've heard that principle, but the fact is, I still think my 9-year-old can honor her dad just like my 17-year-old does, right? But watch this now. This is a beautiful principle. It's a whole lot easier to honor somebody or something when they are honored to be honored. See, many times as men, we demand submission from our wives. Many times we demand obedience from our children. We demand. And there's a time and a place for demanding. That's what makes us men. Men are demanders. My daughter's reading a book already right now. My 7-year-old's reading a book on marriage, and it's teaching her how to prepare herself to be a wife someday. And she has great discussions with me and my wife about that after she reads these books. And she said there's 4 different subjects in man, and one of them is called the king man, which means he's just a leader. And my daughter always says, "Daddy, you're the king. You're the king." So I get to say, "You're my princess, right? You're my princess." We have fun with that. Why? Because listen, man, I am honored to be their dad. If we walk around all the time with this attitude of "you're supposed to honor me," look, America's gone a long way from George Washington to what we have today. Today they want the accolades. Back then you had to beg George Washington to become president. And when he became president, he always had a spirit and attitude of, I'm honored to do this. I don't deserve this, but I'm honored to do this. And I've noticed that when you realize how I'm honored to be a pastor, I'm honored to be a son, I'm honored to be a husband, I'm honored to be a father, that attitude and that spirit affects every relationship in your realm. It really does. And when we have that association with our kids and I realize I am their father, they are my children. Yeah, you're supposed to honor me, but hold on a second. Before you honor me, I'm going to give you something worth honoring. Let me tell you first of all, before you ever said I love you to me, I loved you first. And I am honored to be your father. The association is important. All right, let me give you a couple quick tips. Every Wednesday I'm trying to give you some tips on these things, practical tips on how to pay attention, how to pay affection, and how to pay association. All right, number 1, write letters. Write letters to your kids. Kids love that stuff. My 9-year-old loves to go to the mailbox and get a letter from her dad. Why not? Many of you have gotten a letter from me through the years. People love letters. Some of you just throw it away. It don't bother me. But kids love it. They're used to, all the mail is always mom and dad's mail. When they get to the mailbox and they get a letter that has their name on it, they're thrilled. Right? Write letters to your kids. All right? Ask questions and then listen to the answers. I've been guilty of asking questions and my mind wanders somewhere else. And my 9-year-old said, "Daddy, did you hear me?" Oh, I'm sorry, say it again, right? Forgive me, God, for that. Take them on dates. Find out little things they like and get it for them from time to time. My one daughter loves this kind of tea you can only buy at Schnucks. It's this weird tasting tea. So every time I have to go into that store to get something, I grab that tea, I bring it home and just put it on her desk in her schoolroom, or I put it in her bedroom. Boy, when she finds it, guess what I always hear? "Oh, Daddy!" Big old hug and a kiss on the cheek. I'll take that every time for a stinking $1 bottle of tea. Just pay attention to things like that, right? Talk to them about their future. That's important. I don't think people do that anymore. We think so much about now, next week, next month. But listen, we're raising future husbands and wives. We've got to start thinking about that. Talk to them about their future. Talk about God as much as you can. Make sure God is an integral part of their life. Ask them how their relationship is with God. There's nothing wrong with that. I have never forced my kids to read the Bible every day. I've never done that, and I never will. I want them to do it on their own. And guess what? They've learned by the example. My wife and I do it. My 3 oldest are now doing it every day. And the 9-year-old just came up to me and said, Daddy, I think I'm going to start reading at least one chapter of Psalms every day. I said, good. She did that decision on her own. But talk about it. The other day she came up to me and showed me a verse from Psalm. She didn't understand it. We got to talk about it a little bit. Talk about God. Not in a forceful way, but how awesome He is. Make Him intriguing. Make Him like He's a superstar, like He's a celebrity that the kids got to get to know this God that you talk about so much. Talk about God, right? And then, of course, show affection. Now, this is an important one, and I'll end with this one. We have a few minutes, I think. Always brag on them in public and rebuke them in private. Brag on them in public and rebuke them in private. So many times dads are good about rebuking. Look, there's times my kids have run through this church. I've never yelled across the room and scolded them in front of people. Now, you ask all 4 of my kids, some of the trips to my office. My kids don't like my office because they've had some experiences in my office. Why? Because I just look at them, call them aside and say, go to my office. And they know what that means, that long walk from here to my office. They hate that, right? But I'm not going to scream at them or call them down in front of people. God said in front of everybody, this is my beloved Son in whom I'm well pleased. The sun was shining, the dove descended. But when He was crucified, He made it dark for 3 hours. When He smote His Son, it was dark. Beautiful principle. So brag on them in public, rebuke them in private. It's a good principle for your wife, too. Don't rebuke your wife in public. We all know what that means. Couch tonight. All right, so tonight, you talked about the principle of paying, the honor of fatherhood. Pay attention, pay affection, and pay association, all right? I gave you some practical tips. So let me stop real quickly for a few minutes, see if anybody has any questions.